I think it's already 11 a.m., so I think we should start. Let me introduce our speaker today, Dr. Nurbiha Shukor. She is a senior lecturer from the Department of Educational Science, Mathematics, and Multimedia Creative, School of Education, Faculty of Social Science and Humanities from the University Technology Malaysia. Okay, currently she is the Deputy Director for Teaching and Learning at the Center for Academic Leadership, UTM Lead, University Technology Malaysia. So Dr. Nurbiha received a Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Technology from University Technology Malaysia. Today she will be talking about designing online learning. So this topic is important since designing online learning can be very different from face-to-face learning, especially promote an engaging online experience that focuses on teaching presence, cognitive presence, and social presence. So this online learning has to be properly designed to meet target audience expectations. So it is hope at the end of this webinar, the audience will be able to apply the main principles of instructional design model in their course, identify and define learning objectives, create a consistent weekly course structure, and connect learning objectives to course activities and assessments. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Nurbiha Shukor to deliver her talk. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Shaizwan. Hi everyone. So today maybe I will be sharing a little bit about designing online learning. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay, so online learning is basically is really my area. So thank you, Faculty of Pharmacy, UITM, for having me here today. I meant to upload the slides so that it is shareable. However, I encountered some difficulties with the file size. So I think I will pass my slides over to the Secretariat for all of you, for a copy to all of you. Okay, so what we are going to look at today is number one, I will briefly talk about understanding learning, teaching, and instructions. And then later on, you will be able to see why designing instructions is very important, and then we will hit on to preparing for online learning, and as well, and then we will talk more about it in designing online learning. So when we talk about preparing online learning later on, I will break down the phases into several phases, and then we are going to specifically talk about designing for online learning. Okay, so if we look at the first part, understanding learning, teaching, and instruction. So there is a very big difference between learning, teaching, as well as instruction. If I may share, or I think you can write that in the chat box. Simply write, try to, it's not guess, try to relate which one refers to learning, which one refers to teaching, and which one refers to instructions. So you can write A, is it A, learning, B, teaching, instructions. Can I have a quick 1 minute for this activity? What do you understand by learning? What do you understand by teaching? And what do you understand by instructions? I think you can write the answer in the chat box. Susah? I think over the years, if you have at least teaching in one semester, you can somehow be able to describe or guess what is learning and what is teaching, as well as what is instruction. Okay, I have one answer teach for C. Learn as B. T for instruction. We will have another 10 seconds. B e-learning. Yes. 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. So no more answers. Okay. Dr. Liu Gi Moy. I think you get it all correct. So A is actually instructions, B is learning, and C is teaching. So I put here. Sorry. Okay. So B is learning, C is teaching, plus 1 is instructions. So basically, what we are designing most of the time is usually start with instructions. When we design our instructions correctly, then we only get the whole idea of teaching, and then after we combine these elements, then only you have a learning experience that can be that you can later on deliver or set for your students. And I make it important, I include that here in the slide, because that it is important for us to understand how people learn. And maybe this is a little bit theoretical or fundamental because me coming from School of Education. However, sometimes when you want to teach some skills, you want to teach knowledge, or you want to teach effective. So sometimes it requires different types of learning theories. The way you teach has to be different because they learn these skills, knowledge, as well as effective differently. So it is important for us to understand before we teach how actually people learn. Okay, so there are many theories, okay? So I will just briefly talk about all these 4 theories. These are the major ones. Okay, so if you talk about behaviorism learning theory says that a person will only learn if they have change in behavior. Okay, that's why it is called behaviorism learning theory. For example, let's say previously I do not know how to cook. Previously I do not know how to cook mee goreng. Now I know how to cook mee goreng. So I have change in behavior. I do not know how to cook, and now I know how to cook. So if you want to teach skills, usually people use behaviorism learning theory. Now, Cognitivism learning theory says that a person learn when they are able to to translate back or to download all the information that has been stored in their memory and then convey that to you. Okay, that is Cognitivism learning theory. Meaning to say that if a student is able to memorize, usually is able to memorize, and then they can say that out loud again what they have learned or what they know in their memory, that means they have learned. Okay, this means in simple words, it is said that if you don't memorize, okay, then you don't learn. Simply said lah. Okay, so Cognitivism talks a lot about how can we make our learning materials easier to be digested for our students so that they can remember, because once they remember, according to this theory, then our students will learn. Okay, so that is a second perception about how people learn. The third perception about how people learn is that people learn when they are able to construct their own meaning. So that is Constructivism learning theory. So meaning to say that when previously, before they learn, they cannot, they cannot know how to define, for example. And then after they learn, they are able to combine ideas and then able to independently define something. So they construct something on their own. So that means they have learned. Okay, so this is the major three differences of the three major learning theories. Okay, number one is when you change in behavior, then you learn. Number two is when you are able to memorize and then you can translate back what you have memorized. That is cognitivism. Number three is you learn if you are able to construct meaning from whatever information that you have in mind. So that is constructivism. Connectivism is actually quite a new learning theory that is emerging due to internet and globalization. So connectivism learning theory says that a person learns when they are able to connect the correct information together. That is connectivism learning theory. So if me, myself, let's say I have 5 types of resources over the internet that I browse through all the over the internet, and I found five resources. So I do not know if I know which resources is important for me to achieve my own objective, that means I have learned. So that is the perception of connectivism learning theory. I do not want you to memorize this one. It's just that so you know, okay, people learn differently. And when we understand how people learn, then only we can teach them how to learn, okay? So when we understand that one, then only we can start designing. Now, as I said, there are 4 major learning theories before, okay? So if you have trouble like differentiating them, you can just use these 7 rules, okay? Because according to these 4 theories, learning occurs differently, and for example, for behaviorism, learning occurs when they have change in behavior. So every learning theory you can differentiate based on these 7 questions. You can browse through over the internet. There are many explanation about these learning theories. Now, how do we relate that learning theory in preparing for online learning? Okay, I divide the phases for preparing online learning into these 4 phases with respective instructional design model. So if usually if you want to develop a course or if you want to develop a lesson, in fact, you usually applies the ADDIE model. So you analyze your target audience, and then you design, you develop, you implement, and evaluate. So I put that respectively in the following columns. Where is my laser? Okay, so I have 4 phases. Number 1, you have to design. When you want to design and you analyze, that occurs before online learning session start. And then you have to have at the beginning of the online learning session, during online learning session, and after online learning session. This is very specific to one learning session. I'm not talking about even a course. I'm in this context, presentation context, I will be talking about one online learning session only. So to design one online learning session, okay, there are 4 major phases. Before online learning session, at the beginning of online learning session, during online learning session, and after online learning session. So what should we do before online learning session? This can be quite a lot, but I will later show you that if you are if you have you are proficient in in doing things, you can just focus on making alignments here later on. Okay. However, I will be teaching you step by step what to do. This all happens before online learning session. So what to do when you want to identify learners' needs, how do you write the goals, which delivery modes to choose, and what are the learning strategies, where can you collect the resources, what kind of assessment is suitable, and how do you make alignments, and how do you choose the technology, and a little bit introduction of a software that I use to reflect on how I design the timing for every activities. Okay. Now, before online learning session, of course, you have to identify what do you want to teach today. Is it knowledge? Is it skills? And is it attitudes? And usually people relate to, for knowledge, they relate to cognitive domains by Bloom taxonomy. And for skills, there are also Bloom taxonomy for skills, for psychomotor skills. There are also Bloom taxonomy for attitudes. All right. This is an example because I don't have this in open source. So I won't be sharing that one. Okay. So this is the taxonomy Bloom for cognitive. That is to, if you want to teach knowledge related activities. Should I? Nampak ni talking?
Saya sikat tu penuh kosong. Lepas tu saya tanda dia tu penuh. Lepas tu balik berapa?
Sorry, if someone is talking,
Can
you hear me?
please mute your mic?
Puan Rohana. Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, apa tadi? Lupa dah. Okay, as I said, before online learning session, you have to know what is it that you want to teach. Is it knowledge? Is it skills? Or is it attitude? If you want to teach knowledge, so that means you want to teach something factual, concepts, terminology, theories. If you want to teach something about skills, that means you want to teach something that involves step-by-step process, techniques or methods. And this also includes critical thinking skills, that is also skills, problem-solving skills, that is also fall under skills. Or do you want to teach attitudes, for example, valuing or things like that? Okay, so you can use different domains based on the things that you want to teach. So this is just to help you to write your learning goals. So you also do not need to remember, you just need to know. Okay, now these are different learning domains, taxonomy Bloom for different areas, which is cognitive. If you want to teach psychomotor, you refer to this triangle. If you want to teach something related to values, you refer to this taxonomy. So I won't be going further into this as well. However, I think I need to reiterate, maybe most of you have known about writing the correct learning objective. Okay, so usually in a learning objective, there is ABCD rule, which is A consists of your learning objective statement has to have the audience, who are the audience. It has to state what is the behavior that you want your audience to carry out. And is there any condition when the behavior is being carried out? And to what degree you want your audience to carry out the behavior. So this is an example of learning objectives. I choose this one and I use this one throughout our demonstration later on. So I put here students. So if you want to be more specific, you can say fourth year student, because maybe fourth year student can be different than second year student because they have different prerequisites. So it's okay. Okay, students will be able to differentiate between logical and arithmetic Python operators. So I teach programming, so I use this example. So differentiate between logical and arithmetic Python operators. This is the behavior that I want my students to demonstrate. Okay, they are able to differentiate, and then including, so to what degree I want my students to be able to differentiate. So other than they know to differentiate, they have to know the respective function. So this is to the degree that I want my students to be able to demonstrate this behavior. And then under what condition? So they have to be able to demonstrate this behavior, okay, under the condition that it is applied to a problem that I gave them. Okay, so once they are able to differentiate, to use the different operators in a given problem that I gave them. So I gave them problem A, and then they use this operator. I gave them problem B, and they use different operators, so they are able to use different operators based on the problem that I gave. So this is the condition. Okay, so usually we stop at here, not even degree. We stop at behavior. Usually we have audience as well as behavior only, not to the level of condition and degree. Usually we stop here. Most of our learning objective, which is okay as well, because usually when we design later on, we know that to what level that we want our students to be able to apply the concept that we teach them. So sometimes, most of the time, we stop our learning objectives here. We have the audience, ciri-ciri, the audience characteristic, as well as the behavior, but not the degree as well as the condition. Okay, this is just maybe to refresh back. And where do you use the taxonomy bloom that I shown just now? Here, it's just to help you to put the correct verb to the learning objective. Okay, so you can use differentiate, you can use analyze in your learning objective. Okay, up until there, do we have any question? You can unmute yourself if you have question. No? Okay, then I move on. Now, the first step is to establish learning goals, and then you choose the delivery mode. Now, remember, this is designing online learning. So, in online learning, you can have 3 modes. Number 1, you can carry out your online learning entirely real time. You can carry out your online learning in a delayed time or not real time, or you can mix both. Okay, so if you want to carry out your online learning in real time, we call that asynchronous. If you want to carry out your online learning in delayed time, we call that asynchronous. And you can also mix both. Okay, so half time is the real time, half of the online learning is not real time. Now, when I say mix of synchronous and asynchronous online learning, this does not mean blended learning. Please do not be confused. Okay, blended learning means part of it is brick and mortar, part of it is online. That is the true definition of blended learning. However, I may understand maybe certain different institutions might have different interpretation of the definition of blended learning. However, if you mix synchronous and asynchronous mode, that is not blended learning. Blended learning is a blend of face-to-face and online. And when I say face-to-face, that means brick and mortar face-to-face. Okay, so because as some people understand that synchronous can be, virtual face-to-face like what we are currently doing right now. However, the true definition of blended learning is brick and mortar face-to-face. Okay, so once you choose your delivery mode, you have your learning objective here. Okay, then you say, okay, for next week, I think because I want to teach something that doesn't really need for them to demonstrate in front of me, so that I can correct them, then this can be done virtually. So I maybe just want to choose an asynchronous mode. Okay, and then so this is the difference. So in asynchronous, you do not carry out live session. You can have your pre-recorded videos. You can plan your online activities using the online tools, and the assessment is not real time, meaning to say that they can take up the assessment at any time that they want, as long as you set maybe a timeline for them to do that. Okay, if synchronous, it has to happen there and then. So this is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. Now, once you have chosen your mode of delivery online, which is, as I said, I chose the asynchronous, then how do I want to deliver to meet my learning goals? Okay, as I said just now, you have to first know what are the learning domains that you want to deliver. Okay, as I said, in my case, I want to deliver knowledge. So I choose the Constructivism learning theory, for example. And what I meant by Constructivism learning theory just now was that I want the students to construct their own meaning. Okay, so I want my students to be able to differentiate on their own and not from me lecturing them. So meaning to say that later on in my design, I won't be having activities where me, myself, lecturing my students, because I choose this learning theory or learning approach as the foundation for me to deliver these learning goals. Okay, and how do I want my students to do this is that I want them to construct their own meaning by solving a hypothetical problem that I gave them. So this is the one that I choose. So if you use skills, you can have many other approaches. As I said, skills, usually people would like to use behaviorism learning theory, such as when they carry out correct steps, and then they gain 1 point in correct step, and then they deduct 1 point. If attitude, usually they can have self-determination theory to do that, where in the activity you invite your students to visit a virtual plantation to record and observe something. So this is some of the examples of activities with respective strategy, with respective learning domains. Okay, this might be, you might want to cross everything this out. You might want to cross this one, sorry. You might want to cross this one. Usually, if someone is very proficient in learning strategies, they can somehow generally know, okay, okay, I want my students to do on their own. That means constructivism. So when we want our students to do on their own, so we have to give them something that to work on. Okay, so if you want your students to display or demonstrate a step by step, so and you want to gamify that a little bit, so this is the one. So it's not necessarily that you have to write this down. I'm worried that this might scares you. Okay, that you have to know what is the learning strategy and approach. You just somehow know how would you like your students to learn. Is it to construct their own meaning, or do you want them to memorize? If you want to memorize, and then you use cognitivism or things like that. Okay. Then, after you have chosen your learning strategies, you collect the resources. Now, Dr. Aisha mentioned to me just now, you know about, you have been briefed about what is open educational resources, and I want to reiterate again the importance of open educational resources and where you can get them. Okay, based on my learning goals here, okay, I want my students to differentiate between logical and arithmetic Python operators. Okay, so my students have to know what is logical and arithmetic operators in the first place, as well as their function, and then hypothetical problem. So I need these two sources. In fact, three. Which is, number one is the operators itself. How can they know what is the Python operators? Number two is their function. Number three is the problem. So I need these resources. Now, so for these two, logical and arithmetic Python operators, as well as their function, so I missed this out, and their function, I use a link to notes. For hypothetical problem, I need to search for what is the hypothetical problem that my students can use so that they can construct their meaning about the operators. Now, do I do that from scratch? Of course not. Okay. So there are many places where you can get notes for free, and you can modify your notes, and sometimes you can even sell the notes. Okay, so but for me myself, I like to use MIT OCW. Okay, usually OER, Open Educational Resources, is different than copyrighted materials because they have the CC license. This is the license. So I for university level content, I usually look at MIT OCW. They have videos, they have notes that you can download for free, and then you can reuse that. So the first resources about the logical and arithmetic Python operators, I get it from here. So you see, I don't create my own notes. I just reuse what is already available. Okay, but I just need to have time to collect them. And then For the second one, I also need problems, as I said. I also need a hypothetical problem for my students to solve. So I browse through Project Euler. This is another website, but this is very specific for programming. So this website is also common creative, meaning to say that I can make use of the problems elsewhere because it says yes. It is not only granted, but it is also encouraged. So I take my problems here. They have, I think, more than 1,000 problems that I can download from. So I just reuse that as my materials. Other than that, okay, so I use MIT OCW just now to look for my free notes. You can also refer to Oasis by Commonwealth of Learning. Maybe I'll just demonstrate to you. I hope this is useful. Okay, if you go to Oasis, oasis.org. Okay, sorry, not org, oasis.col.org. Okay, they have repository of materials. So do you want, for example, course or learning materials and open educational resources? You click here. And then you can browse through the series of materials here. You can have programming. So I download this one, programming with Python. So there's a button for download here. So you see the license here. It is Creative Commons. It is CC license, meaning to say that I can reuse, remix, reshare, and redistribute. So I just download that. So I'll just tell my students refer to which page, and then for the reading materials for my students. Okay, you see here they have complete materials including exercises and everything. Okay, this is just one example. You can also go to, for example, for images. Okay, this is an example of notes. Another place for you to go is MIT OCW. This is also very useful. This is the one, MIT Open Courseware. So I browse that by topic. Okay. So I find by topic. Computer science first. Or you can, okay, you can do it this way, or you can even search here. Programming. Okay, so you can have a list of materials here. Let's say I want to use this one, Computer Science Introduction. So I can go to the video lectures, I can download the video lectures, I can download the course material, can click here to start download. So this is all.
Dr. Biha?
Yeah.
Doktor tunjuk slide ke Doktor tunjuk?
Alamak, sorry. Kejap.
Okay.
Hold on. Ni. Okay. Sorry. Okay, the first one that I was telling you was about Oasis. So it is Oasis, this one, .col.org. Okay, so you click on course/learning materials and open educational resources. So I search here programming. So I want to use programming with Python. And then I download that. And then now I have the full book for the full text for Python programming. So I can just tell my students what page do they have to refer to for their reading. Okay. All right. So this is the first place that you can look for. Another great place is the OCW MIT. So this is, you just type MIT OCW. Okay, you can straight away look for topics, or you can even search here. Programming, Python. Okay, now I have computer science and programming in Python, maybe this one. So they have lecture slides and codes, in fact, example of codes. So you can just download that, click on the slide, and then they also have the Python files for me to download. Let's say I want this one. So yeah, I can also take this one and then reuse that in my lesson. Okay, is that clear for many? Is there any question up to here? Getting your slides, your Open Educational Resources slides. Okay, you see here again, there is this CC license. It is not copyrighted, meaning to say all the materials here is not copyrighted. But when you want to use the material, you can just cite the name of the people, of the person who produced the resources. Okay, so this is where I get my stuff sometimes, or maybe if I want to learn, to extra learn and more to be more prepared if I get new subject, you know, suddenly from my head of department, then I have to learn things. If I knew things briefly, then I have to learn. So you can learn from these professors, you can watch their videos, the videos can be downloaded and all. All right. Okay, move on to the... Okay, about the images. So what about if you want to get multimedia images for free? So I will be teaching you maybe a little bit of a trick. This is the place where I usually access to get multimedia, open source multimedia. So it is called Wikimedia Commons. So you go here, you can get images, you can get videos or photograph. So I usually go to Wikimedia Commons. Let's say I want to have an image on photosynthesis. Rather than Google that up, okay, you can always Google that, but you don't know. You never know who the images belongs to who. Okay, so for here you know for sure, and then you know for sure that you can reuse that and remix that. So let's say I want to use this one. Okay, there's a button for download here. Okay, and you can always see the license here. You are free to share, to remix, but you must give appropriate credit. Okay, maybe later on if you want to know how to give credit, then maybe I will teach you if you have time. Okay, so you can just click on download. So you can choose what size do you want for your image. Do you want it very small? Do you want it medium size or very big? Full resolution? Or you can have this pixel. Okay, so you can download that. Okay, that is clear for obtaining multimedia. Okay, so you can also look for materials in Pixabay. However, in Wikimedia Commons, usually you have more educational images in Wikimedia Commons. In Pixabay, for example, they usually have images. They have many images, but usually not related to education. So you can have books, for example, and then maybe you want that in the form of illustration and not real photo. So here, for example, this one, if you click there will be a button free download. And if you see the license here, Pixabay license, free for commercial use, and you do not even have to give attribution. Meaning to say that if you want to sell this image, you can. This is what it means by free for commercial use. It is not even CC license, but it is an open source. It is directly open source. You can do anything you want with this image, for example. So, however, as I said, Pixabay and many other similar websites, they don't have many educational related multimedia. So, I don't think they have photosynthesis. Yeah, you can have here, but with no labels and things like that. So you have to modify a little bit, maybe to put label. Here, this is quite okay. Okay. Now, for open educational resources or any CC license material, there's always a button for free download. So if you, for example, if you Google image, any image, there is no button for download, right? There's only the way you want to get the image is you right click and then you put on save, click on save. So that means it is not free for download, because the way you get that image is you right click and then you save image. So if that image is meant to be given to you, then there will always a button for you to download. That is one way of differentiating lah. Is this material copyrighted or not? Okay, if the way you get it is you click on free download button, there is a button to download, then it means that it is for you to download. Okay, so I think I spent quite a lot of time over there. Okay, now that is how you can collect your resources. So other than developing one, okay, you can also always be encouraged to use open educational resources. Make full use of what is already available out there. And then you choose your assessment. Now, for this learning objective or this learning goal, obviously, I want them to be able to differentiate. When I want them to be able to differentiate, I want them to actually know what is logical and what is arithmetic Python operators. So actually, later on, when I want to assess, I have to check. Did they understand about what is logical operators? Did they understand about arithmetic operators and the function? Okay, and to be able to apply, it's a matter of for me to deliver the content. Okay, right. This is in my assessment later on. I will be testing them on this factual knowledge. Okay, so I can choose to do this by quiz. Do I want them to do this to test this knowledge in terms of discussion or case study? Okay, so you can choose from that. However, you have to derive that again from your learning objective when you choose your assessment. Now, when people say that we want to create an engaging online learning, it's actually a matter of putting the correct technology to whatever activity that you design. Then it becomes engaging. Okay, so it is more important to understand how to make to align all your content, your resources, your assessment, and your learning goals. Because if you want to make it engaging, it's very easy. You just, okay, how do I make this one interactive? Usually, what is interactive is engaging. So here is an example. I think this might come up. You might have come across of this pedagogical wheel. So again, it is also CC license, so I can copy paste this wheel here. So for different taxonomy bloom, so here they focus on taxonomy bloom. They suggest different learning tools. Okay, so you can always, if you want your students to evaluate, you can use Skype, you can use many other tools. So however, it is more important to establish the learning goals as well as the content. Then only you make it engaging. Okay, so now here, for example, if your taxonomy is about analyzing and your activities is about to examine the graph, and then you can use EasyChart or Poplet. So for my case, okay, I have these learning objectives, and to make it engaging, I use a quiz to do assessment, and then to make my activities more engaging, they have to solve the hypothetical problem that I set using Padlet. And to sum up, I put up a recorded video. So when you have everything in place, now you make alignments again. Okay. Now, if you look back again, the step number 1 is to set learning goals. So this is the learning goal that we have set. And I have to choose what is the delivery mode. So I want to deliver that asynchronously, not in real time. So I usually put the assessment right after learning goals, okay, and put the strategy later on, because I do not want to carry out activities, but in the end, I assess different things. So I always put assessment first. What is it I want to assess? Then only I design the strategy or activities. Okay. maybe if you come across a similar template, they usually put activities here. Activities first, and then only assessment at the end of it. However, I always like to put assessment first, so that I design the activities that later I can assess this one. All right. So for this to identify whether so that I know the students are able to identify the logical operators, the arithmetic operators, and their function, I gave them problems so that they construct on their own what is the operators and what are their functions. Then I have the content that I want to use. So all this content or the sources that I want to use is all OER. So I didn't create this on my own. Instead, I collect the resources over the internet, whatever open educational resources that is already there. Okay, so I refer to that. I tell my students, oh, you refer to this one. And to make it engaging is a plus here. Technology, how do you support assessment? How do you support your activities? Okay, so when people say engaging, online learning, for example, designing engaging, you have to establish this one first. Then you make it engaging with technology. Okay, I'm not against technology. However, we do not focus on technology first, because to make it engaging is very easy. It's quite easy as long as maybe you have this. Once you have this pedagogical will, I think it is even easier to make it engaging. There are so many tools to make things engaging. Okay, you can just choose from. Okay. If you notice here, I put number 5, the same number as choosing technology. Because you always need, maybe this might be a sequential step in doing things. However, you always have to go back and reflect when you want to make alignments. So number 6, then only you do your reflection of student learning time. So number 5 has to consist of making alignments and go back to technology. Is it okay? And then look again to your alignment. Does it fit with my learning goals? So you have to go back and forth to make sure that it is suitable and it is not too much or taking too much of your time, of your students' time to learn about the technicalities. Now, finally, I wrote here student learning time. Please do not confuse this with the student learning time that we have in our course information. What I meant here by student learning time is that how many minutes that students spend on our specific activities. And for this reason, I would like to introduce all of you to a very great tool. I think is a very useful tool that you can use for free. They call that as Learning Designer. So later on I will show you. So this Learning Designer helps you to estimate how many minutes do you spend on asking students to produce things. How many minutes do you spend to ask students to acquire knowledge or to do discussion or to do practice? Okay. Here, you can put what is the activities that you want your students to do and how do you want them to do it? Do you want them to read, watch, or listen, and for how many minutes? Or you want them to discuss, or do you want them to produce something, and how many minutes you dedicate for that activity? Okay, so for my lesson, I have one learning goals that I want them to differentiate between logical and arithmetic operators, and I also want them to learn about the functions. Then once they have done this, then only they solve the hypothetical problems. And they have, of course, when they solve the hypothetical problems, they have to discuss how do we go about it. And then, of course, they have to produce the solution. Okay, so this is two different things. If we look at the alignment just now, it is not very evident. Okay, I just put here solve two hypothetical problem. When we ask our students to solve problem, there are two things happening. Number one is they discuss. Number two is they produce the product. The product of the solution. Okay. However, it is not very evidence here. So that's why this Learning Designer is very useful. then you know, okay, when they want to solve, first they have to discuss. So they have to have some time to discuss. And then they have to produce. That is another time to produce. Okay, so you have to dedicate some time for your students to produce. So it is two different things within one activities. And later on, they will show you how many times were you present or you not present. And for this purpose, I said all my activities are entirely online. And then what type of activity that you gave them and how many percent of it. And you will be able to know, you know, most of your activities is about reading and watching only. No active learning activities, no. However, you only have maybe discussion and a little bit of practice. So if you combine this, okay lah, ada sedikit active learning kat situ dan ada production. So you'll be able to know how many times mungkin yang ini major. Kita spend a lot of time asking students to read, watch, or listen, which is passive learning activities. And then this contributes to a little bit of active learning activities. Now, let me show you. Please let me know if I'm over the time. Okay, so this is the website. You can go to learningdesigner.org. So you can start by, you log in, it is for free, so you can start. And then you can put it in your, let me start a new one. Sorry. Okay, you log in. So you can, I can straight away view my design, or I can create a new one. So these are my designs. Okay. So I can write here. Okay, so I can write here what is the name of the topic, and how many hours do I want to spend on that, what is the outcome, so what is the mode of delivery, and then you can add your TLA. TLA is teaching and learning activities. So you write here, and then you choose what activities that you want your students to carry out. Is it collaborate? Is it discussing? Is it investigating? Is it practice or produce? So how many students will be involved? And is teacher present or not? Is it online or offline? Is it synchronous or asynchronous? And what is the notes? So these are the functions. So you can click here. This means it is online. Here, if it is this one is tick, it means it is synchronous. And you can add that. Add for defining activities. For defining, maybe you can have 3 activities to learn about defining, maybe. Okay, so you can add that. This is how it works. And then you can export your design. Let me show you the complete one. Okay. So I have put in my outcome, my size of my class, and then my learning time. I aim to have 1 hour. However, in my design, I only managed to complete 45 minutes. Okay. So I can export my design in the form of Microsoft Word. And then here is percentages of the activities that you dedicate for your students within this time. So you can easily see this one. This is also a form of learning analytics when you want to design. So when I download that, I have the Word document of it. Okay, so here it is more detailed. It analyzes here the percentages that I show you. They don't do that in the website, in the web form. So how many students are involved every time you carry out activities, how many times are you present or not present, so things like that. You can download that one as well. So this is not compulsory, but if you just want to have a check from time to time, you can use this one to check whether how have you been doing all this while in designing your lesson. Maybe you take too much of time to lecture, maybe. Okay, so you can design that. Now that is before online learning session. Okay, so there are basically 6 things that you have to do before online learning session start. Now, at the beginning of online learning session. Okay, for example, you design your online learning session a day before your class starts. So now today is the day, the class is at 11. So at 10:30, what you need to do on that specific day. Okay, number one, maybe if you have time, then you put things in place. If you have to set the instruction, you copy paste the instruction, you set the forum or you set the Padlet link and everything. Make sure of the technicalities. Is everything functioning? Do you check the link? Is the link is working? Make sure you have clear instruction. Okay, and make sure if you, this is very important, especially if you carry out your online learning session asynchronously, where you are not present in real time. So write explicitly the instruction and write also your expectation towards your students' work. For example, at the end of the day, I expect you to produce a PDF of your solution. I'll write that down so that they know, okay, we have to submit our solution in a PDF form. Okay, so explain that clearly. In online learning setting, instruction is very important. Okay, so this is at the beginning of online learning. Then, during online learning session, if this is asynchronous, if this is being done asynchronously, so maybe you can put it in such a way. So students read on types of arithmetic operators. So I have the notes, and then they form the groups, and then to solve the problems, and then they check their answers individually. I have a simple quiz to assess that, and then they sum up lessons, and I gave them a recorded video about what the whole lesson was about. Okay, remember, as I said, this is asynchronous. This is not occurring in real time. So meaning to say, this whole activity, although the time is 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, this doesn't mean that all these activities will be completed within one day or within the 45 minutes, in one go. Okay, they might take maybe 1 week to do this reading, or another day to do the group activities, or another day to do the assessment, and another day to watch the recorded video. The time here is just to show you how many minutes will it take for students to carry out this activity if this is done asynchronously, because it's not done in real time, in real time. Okay, and I have a dotted line of yellow dotted line here. This means that I just want to remind myself and all of us here that students need scaffolding all the time. Okay, they might also need scaffolding here and here. However, here is very important. They might prompt you with question, doctor, how do I do this? Doctor, I cannot, how do I form groups? If you receive a lot of questions, that meaning to say that your instruction is not clear enough, number one, or they don't understand the question, or so you need to be available during this activity to give them scaffolding. Okay, so what I meant by scaffolding, there are many types of scaffolding. Scaffolding is different than giving help. Okay, scaffolding in teaching means that you give a hint so that they can move forward with their lesson. For example, if your student comes to you and asks you, doctor, how do I solve this equation? Let's say, and then you say, okay, look at what Amin has written in the discussion board. Do you think this is similar with the equation that you are trying to solve? You see, that is scaffolding by giving hints, because you did not give direct answer. However, you point your student towards the direction in which can help them to solve the problem. That is scaffolding. You give support. It's not a support actually. Some kind of support, but because scaffolding in construction is support, right? So, but you do not give direct answer. That is what I meant to say. Okay, you give scaffolding. Scaffolding can be metacognitive scaffolding. If in education there are many types of scaffolding, so you can give scaffolding in the form of hints, or you can give a student scaffolding in the forms of resources. You can also say, okay, if you want to look at, if you want to know what is the solution to this problem, try to refer to this link. So you give resources for them to look through and to read so that it can help them to solve the problem. So, but no direct answer to the problem. Okay, so that is what scaffolding is. So for you can also, if your online learning is in the form of synchronous, okay. I didn't plan for this for my learning objectives. So, however, you might want to spend maybe 2 minutes to explain the ground rules and what are we going to learn today, and to share the materials to your student, and then you brief them on the activities. That might take another 2 minutes, and then you break up them into groups. So for them to discuss, to solve problems in groups, and then you have another session to discuss answers, and then they carry out activities to answer questions, and then conclusion and another 3 minutes. Now, for synchronous session, I highly encourage you to write the timing, because we have students with limited connectivity, and it's quite costly to have a very live session. So try to plan. Make sure you plan your time, so that it's good to have that less than 1 hour. If you want to have more than 1 hour, have a recorded video or things like that. Do that asynchronously. So again, here I have a yellow dotted line. So when I have a yellow dotted line here, this means that it is very important for you to have here your scaffolding. Okay, scaffold your students all the time. Check what they are currently doing. Do they have problems? What kind of help do they need? So that other than you can reflect on yourself, on the way you design your activities, you have to help your students with the problems that they have. So and again, if you use, for example, the tool WebEx, for example, like we are currently use right now, we use WebEx. Now, WebEx has many functions. They can have whiteboard, they can have breakout rooms, they can have poll, they can have a share screen, and even right now we are doing is sharing screen and also video conferencing. When you design your online learning synchronously, try to stick to only the functions in this tool, which I meant to say is that make full use of the breakout room here. Do not ask your student to discuss in different platform outside than the one that we are currently using, because it makes one thing, it takes time. One thing is actually they might become confused. Okay, I thought we are just concentrating on this part. Now I have to go to another place to do discussion. So try to stick to only whatever features that your currently online learning tools is being used. Okay, if you're using WebEx, make full use of the function in WebEx. You have whiteboard, use the whiteboard. You have breakout room. So maybe you have poll, although poll cannot give students the answers. However, you can see how students is performing in poll. So make full use of the features in that platform. Or synchronous online learning. For asynchronous is okay, they have time for them to do that. Okay. So this is during online learning. So after online learning session, of course, we have to reflect, do you achieve your intended learning outcome? How did the students interact? Did the students meet your expectation? What works and what went wrong? And what technical expertise you need to improve? Maybe if you use a little bit some of the new tools, you might want to be more familiar with the tools that you want to use. This is an example of reflection. When I did my first reflection earlier this semester, okay, I just print out not the bad ones, but the ones that need my action. Okay, it says here, I am too fast in explaining things. To my student says that you are in fact faster than my internet connection. So I don't know, is that a compliment or what? Okay, but so meaning to say that I obviously have to talk slowly. Another student also said the same thing. Doctor, maybe you could slow down a little bit. Okay, because sometimes I have a hard time catching you up. And then another student says, I would like you to explain in detail the types of programming languages. Okay, so this is, I think, the first week when I have my online learning session. this is, I think, the second week, because I was thinking, when I do a mix, I usually use a mix session. I mix synchronous and asynchronous. So when I have this live session, I have problem in slowing myself down, and I cannot. It's hard for me to reflect back and to correct that. If I'm talking too fast. So the next week I recorded a video, and then I received this feedback. The recorded video are being recorded by topics, so it made me feel easier to understand every topic. So this is a response that I get based on the responses that I received. I think in the first 2 weeks, I think. I didn't do this. I do this consequently for 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 4 initial weeks of my online learning. And then after the 5th week, I didn't ask for feedback from my students. Okay, because although there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only questions, but to ask your students every time to fill in the feedback is very is a very tiresome activity for your students, in fact. So I stopped doing that on the 4th week because I somehow see the pattern of answer is usually the same thing. So what they like and what they don't like, now I see the pattern lah. Okay, so I stop at the 4th week. And finally, some take-home message maybe. Okay, one thing is that you have to realize, and we have to realize, that it takes more effort and more time to plan for online learning compared to if you want to teach face-to-face. That is of course. And we have to realize that. And if you think that you are giving more time, why do I am spending a lot of time in doing this for teaching online? No, you are not wrong. Actually, everybody experience the same thing. We have to spend more time and effort to plan for online learning, especially in designing what tools to use, how can they discuss, is the link working properly. So it takes time. Scaffold. Although I encourage to scaffold during activities, however, in online learning, you have to scaffold all time. Sometimes you have to give emotional scaffold, like for example, support them emotionally. So that is also a type of scaffolding. Okay, if not related to cognition, so you also have to give them help, support emotionally, and be aware of your time. Not too much and not too few. Sometimes we think that ni macam dah cukup dah ni kot. Okay, maybe no. Okay, so using the learning designer that I shared with you, the website, it can be useful, but do not bother much on that if you think you don't have time. It's just that you do that if you once in a while, if you just want to check on yourself, am I on the right track? Okay, then once you get the hip of it, then you can just proceed on your own. And never skip reflection. Never skip reflection, meaning to say that always reflect back. Happened today. Maybe next week I don't use this tool. This tool is quite confusing. Even myself is being confused. So never skip reflection. Have a 1-minute thought on what happened in the class today. I think that's all from me. So do we have any question and answer session, Dr. Aisha, or not?
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe we can have a short question and answer session.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let me just read one question from the chat box. The question is it suitable to give additional activity if you choose to conduct recorded lectures? And if yes, do you have any suggestion? Yeah.
Okay. Do you mean to say added activities? Although we have a recorded session, I would say you can do that, but this time refer to your course information, student learning time. I was telling you about student learning time here. When you design the activity in your session. However, if you want to give more than what is already here, now is the time for you to actually refer to the actual student learning time in your course information. make sure it is not too much. I don't have a formula for what is too much and what is not too much. However, you have to stick to that because our students take about 17 credits to 21 credits one semester. So they have, if we have one lecturer like you and another 3 to 5 lecturers doing the same thing, can you imagine the burden that they have to uphold to? So that might be my take on this. Stick to the student learning time in the course information. If it is within that, by all means, you can do that.
All right. Okay, thank you for your answer. There's one question I received in WhatsApp. She wanted to know your experience in planning and preparing more than one course. Do you have any experience to share? Any tips?
Oh, okay. This programming subject is an undergraduate subject. I also teach another subject, master subject. But this is, because it is very different in the sense that one is undergraduate students, one is postgraduate student. Because postgraduate students, we want to encourage more of constructing their own ideas. So for postgraduate students, I have more activities of discussion and collaboration and practice here. However, less of reading and watching or listening. So for undergraduate students, I have some of this and sometimes a little bit exceed. This one is exceeding the rest of the activities. So that is how I design it. But however, there is no quick way of doing that, unfortunately. The very least that you can do if you want to do online learning is you plan on this one. No, this one. You focus on this one. Maybe a quick way to do it lah. Okay, because if you have so many subjects that with different learning domains that you have to teach, maybe you want to straight away plan on this one. However, get this one correct. Get this one correct lah. So you just plan on this one, quickly plan this one. You can straight away go to this step if you want to teach online for different courses and different domains, I would say. Then you are skipping the rest. But maybe for once, try to follow the step, then you get the whole of it, and then you can straight away focusing on this one. That would be my answer.
So I have a question as well. I'm wondering, during the learning activity that you have conducted, do you incorporate assessment as well? Like, do you assess the participation, engagement, communication in that session, or do you have a separate session for that?
Okay. For example, most of the time for my online learning session, and if my goals is like this one, is knowledge based to identify their factual or conceptual understanding. The assessment is usually in the form of quiz. However, if I have a learning goals in assessing skills related, I ask them to demonstrate. And then that one, the assessment sometimes takes longer and is not necessarily in one session. But sometimes it can be included for simple skills related assessment. Sometimes it takes, I give them longer time to do that when I design, not necessarily in one go of online learning session.
All right. Okay. There's another question from the website, but it's about assessment. Do you want to cover that as well? Assessment rubric?
No, I'm not an expert in assessment rubric.
So maybe we can skip that.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So any other question from the participants?
Dr. Biha.
Yes.
I'm actually curious, since you are the learning analytics expert. Do you have any experience using YouTube analytics to study how your learners perform or use your videos, for example?
Okay, one thing, what is available in the YouTube analytics, they only have, for example, for Facebook, for example, we have reaction, we have likes, we have shared, so those kind of analytics, right? For YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, they have analytics for watch, save, bookmark, I think bookmark, favorites, so favorites, and then bookmark, save favorites, as well as downloads, I think. Okay.
And also
However, yes.
And also that they have, I think, a profile over time, over the video length.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
However, for my video, I put that in YouTube. However, it is unlisted because some of my videos I include names, call out names to my students. So I make it unlisted, meaning to say that only those who have access, who has link to that video, can access the video. So to your question, I only look at the analytics based on how many students access. No, I don't do more analytics than that. I don't go into detail how many minutes you take to digest this one video. No.
Okay.
I believe there is that function, but no. I just quickly browse through how many students have access to that video because I close that to my students. Yeah.
Would you recommend any? Does Moodle have that kind of apps or the widget for that to just assess to see how the student engage with the video? Basically, students' engagement with the videos or the content.
By engage, you mean that time taken to view the video? Is that?
Time taken to the video, time taken. Also, how many of them watch over time? Maybe there's a profile of the parts of the videos. Which one is more? Which one is less?
What I know is that you can know whether they have watched in Moodle. They have watched, and then that is provided that the video is uploaded in a Moodle itself and not in YouTube. So they identify whether the link has been clicked. However, for most Moodle services, we in universities, we never encourage lecturers to upload their own video in our Moodle server because the files will be big. So we usually have link to the YouTube. We always ask lecturers to link that to YouTube. So for that reason, we can always see whether the students have clicked on that link and then time spent on that link. That one you can have.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
All right. So is there any other questions?
And maybe before we leave, if you are interested in, in learning more, or
tak nampak Nurbiha apa ni because of your background dia makan.
Kejap.
Planted. Your background kalau you off your background mungkin nampak sikit.
Okay, the title of my book is A Guide to Online Course Design.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, A Guide to Online Course Design by Tina Staffredis. I will put that. I will write that in chat. It is a Wiley brand. It is good. I refer to this book maybe all the time. It's actually not in very perfect shape anymore. So I will write that down. A guide to online course design. So it's not necessarily for online course design. You can use this to design your online learning session because online course is maybe a little bit big, but you can use the same strategy to design online learning session. It is by Tina and Tiffany. So I think you can get this one from Amazon. I think I bought this. I forgot how much it costs. but this is useful. It is green in color. I'm sorry I cannot. There are some fishy background at the back, so I don't dare to switch off my virtual background. Okay, so this is a book. You can refer to this book. You can look for that in Amazon. I think that's all from me.
All right. So I think that will be the end of the session. Thank you to all the participants, and thank you to Dr. Nurbiha as well for the very interesting talk on designing online course. Yeah. So with that, again, I would like to thank everyone and end the session. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to have a picture or?
Yep, if everyone can. Azwa boleh Azwa? Tolong Azwa.
Boleh doktor.
Okay, semua orang boleh on their camera.
Boleh Dr. Biha stop sharing? Thank you.
Dr. Biha mana dah hilang?
Ada tu? Tak ada ke? Buku saya?
Okay, yeah, okay. I think maybe we can have you again lah, inshallah. I was hoping maybe we can learn maybe a bit more on that analytics. That would be the way forward, I think, in TNL.
Sure. Thank you very much, everyone.
Tunggu Ustaz. Azwan okay ke?
Saya rasa tak okey kali ni.
Tak okay kali ni. Okay. Once more ke?
Saya tak boleh nak. Kejap doktor
Ya, Biha. Thank you Dr. Yuan for moderating the session.
Dr. Asha.
Saya rasa macam saya tak dapat nak capture gambar kali ni.
Okay.
Mungkin sebab tadi saya dah terkeluar kan.
Okay, it's okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much Dr. Biha. Jumpa lagi, hopefully. Yes. Thank you. Great session. Okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Biha. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Asha.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Yuan, jumpa lagi ya.
Jumpa lagi. Thank you so much.